Guys, our new sponsor, Cernucci, has teamed up with the UFC to launch their new UFC collection design of urban jewelry. As the first and only officially licensed jewelry brand from the UFC, Cernucci's incorporated the hottest designs from across the pond in London for this incredible collaboration. Each piece is made from 18-karat gold-plated and rhodium silver-plated and authentic metals, and the quality of this collection is unbeatable. Inspired by some of the greatest fighters in the sport, this partnership between Cernucci and the UFC delivers fight fans unique pieces of jewelry that will never disappoint. With over 500,000 satisfied customers worldwide, Cernucci's guarantee promises tracked and insured delivery and easy returns if you're not 100% satisfied. There will be a limited number of unique pieces released over the next couple of years, so stay tuned. But for today, Cernucci makes the perfect gift for UFC fans. Buy your pennant today at Cernucci.com or just click on the link below. Aljo versus Henry going down in March. Now, I got to tell you, and I say this purely to be funny, but I hope that you guys do find the humor in this because this has been going on for 2 months. For 2 months, every fight that is ever going to happen is happening in March. I don't know why that vernacular's out there, and I'm talking about all of them. We're going to redo Kamaru Usman and Leon Edwards, and guess when we're going to do it in March? We're going to get Francis back, and he's going to fight with this opponent or this opponent. Guess when we're going to do it? We're going to do it in March. Like, this is never end. We're going to do Colby, and we're going to do Chimaev. Well, when are we going to do it? We're going to do it in March. Like, this has just never ended, and now we're going to do Cejudo, and we're going to do Aljo, and we're going to do it in March. Now, don't put anything on the March. Maybe it actually is going to be in March, but there is something that's somewhat humorous about that idea, but I want to tell you how we got here. So, Aljo very early on. Aljo's a great story. It was a great story that played out right in front of us. And then our minds are so short-term, I feel like we lost it. Like, I'll just give you an example. Aljamain Sterling comes over to the UFC, and he has a couple of fights. And when I say a couple, it might have been one. He has a fight, or he has 2, and he refuses to come back. He's going to renegotiate with the UFC. I mean, he was like putting his foot down back then to the point that we didn't know who Aljo was. We weren't familiar with Aljo, and the number one thing we knew about him is some guy named Aljo's fighting with the UFC. Oh, by the way, he won. The UFC agreed, hey man, you got something more special than when we sat down the first. But he goes from here, right? I'm going way back, but this was the very start of Aljo's career, so he works his way through. And it wasn't smooth sailing. There was times when it went against him, and you think, okay, that little journey's over. And he always got back on the horse. He always dealt with adversity. He always found a way. Like, Aljo's one of these guys that always finds a way to move forward. And time is an interesting thing. There's a big place, and you'll see people that get stuck in the cracks. You're still people that are stuck on yesterday. You've got to be going one direction at all times, and you got to force yourself sometimes. Everybody gets down, everybody gets depressed, everybody gets defeated. You got to force yourself that you only go one way, which is forward. Aljo always does. I don't see him get credit for it. So anyway, Aljo rises up to the tops. This is a main event guy. This is a top contender. Next thing you know, he's a world champion. Everybody takes it away from him. They couldn't believe that Aljo was a world champion. They couldn't believe that this guy who a fight in or 2 fights in and renegotiated with the UFC, otherwise he was going to walk away today. They can't believe it. Turned out he was as good as he said he was. So we just took it away from him. We knew that he had the belt, but we took it from him, right? We took it in the media, and I should have had the belt, and that was a bad call, and disqualifications, no way to be champion. Like, we did anything that we could reasonably do to resist the idea that this guy is as good as he promised he was 1 or 2 fights into the organization. So now we're forced to accept it because he wins in dominant fashion. Gets Demetrius Johnson coming. I just saw this beautiful piece. Demetrius talking to Joe Rogan. And Demetrius put Aljo over, and he said, man, that guy is a backpack. If Aljo gets onto, Aljo will close distance, get you. I'm trying to copy Demetrius, right? The great Demetrius, but he's going to take distance away, going to get you to the ground. He's going to get your back, and you're never going to get him off. Now, that might sound straightforward, but when you get the potential GOAT in Demetrius to come out publicly and talk about how special you are, okay. So, Aljo's got his beef. And it looks like that's somewhere we can stay for a while. And that's with Peter Yan. We're going to stay there for a while. And then we get Dillashaw back. Okay, great. We have to go with Dillashaw. And it appears that O'Malley is hot on his tail. In the wake of all of this happening, including the rise of Sean O'Malley, in the wake of all of this, we get a call out from Triple C. But Triple C spreads it around a little bit. Triple C was very serious when he wanted to do a super fight at a catchweight with Conor McGregor. He was very serious about that. He was very serious when he wanted to get in there at 145 pounds and fight Volkanovski. For a moment, Henry started looking in the direction of Max Holloway. You guys might remember that, but he was very serious. And ultimately, he ends up at 135 pounds. Now, that's Henry returning for the championship that he never lost. I like that story. I've always liked it when guys have done that. Josh Barnett returned to heavyweight, but it was to pursue a championship that he never lost. He was never beaten for it. It was done in the paperwork. He handed it back. Whatever it was, he didn't get beat, so I just share with you. I like that story works for me. It didn't look like Henry was going to get it. It didn't look like Henry was going to get it. Aljo wasn't super big of the idea. I don't think that Aljo ever had anything against Henry. I don't think that Aljo wanted to make himself look vulnerable by taking the bait of Henry Cejudo. If and when he's ever even going to come back, he appears that he's going to come back, if and when, at a different weight class. Okay, great. So it wasn't overly done. And then Dana White was all but dismissive of it. Dismissive of Henry returning for a championship fight might even be a higher level than Dana was. Dana didn't speak on it. If Dana spoke on it and said no, that would be dismissive. It seemed to be even lower than that. Dana was very quiet about it. And I'm just sharing with you, it began to look for us, the audience, like this wasn't going to happen. Okay, let me take you to the press conference in Abu Dhabi after Aljo successfully defends against Dillashaw, because Dana White got asked at the press conference, what's next for Sterling? And out of nowhere, I mean, really what seemed and felt for that moment to be out of nowhere, Dana said, Cejudo's probably next. And he was very light on it. Dana formed the answer almost in the form of a question. Cejudo's probably next? Like a question mark, but it wasn't a question mark, it was a statement. And then Dana even turned to the audience and said, what do you want to see him do? You want to see him fight Cejudo? Whoever he said it to wasn't on camera, but the guy must have nodded in the affirmative, because Dana goes, all right, well, there you go. And he moved on to the next thing. Like, it was this really light thing that Dana just took out of his pocket and set down. It was a really light thing, but not in those guys' lives. That's that's huge. I'm fighting Aljo next. Okay, Aljo, I'm fighting against Triple C, the great champion who left the division, left this behind, and I came and picked it up, and people put a little asterisk next to my name, the same way as they did Daniel Cormier and Jon Jones is absent. I mean, is that the guy? I'm going to fight this guy. This is real. This is going to happen. Yeah, I think so. I think it is. Ali Abdelaziz came out on Henry's side 3 days ago and said that these guys were going to fight in March. Henry came out and said, we're going to fight. It's going to be soon. I think it's going to be March. And now Aljo has come out and said that we're going to fight in March. So when you have Henry and you have Ali saying it, like, those are really good sources, but you can also see where they would really want something to be accurate information when Aljo comes out and says it. When the fellow competitors and contestants and contenders at that weight class shut their mouths and stand back, it appears that we have something here. And Aljo versus Cejudo's got a lot of moving parts. It really does. Aljo's way better than we knew that he was. That includes when he was champion of the world. When he was the champion of the world and the best, we still didn't know how good he was. And then he showed us there's a gap. Not only the best, there is a gap. I'll spot Jon 2 rounds and I'll still beat him. I will dominate Dillashaw. There's a gap. I'll take on Cejudo. There's a gap. But there was a gap when Henry was there too. Henry fought for a world championship and was all done in less than 20 seconds one time. I mean, there's a gap with Henry as well. Henry's last fight was against Dominic Cruz, who's as good as anybody that's ever done the sport. Henry won the round that was completed and stopped the fight. There was a gap. it really seems like the right match. I want you guys to be excited about it. I know before you get excited, you have to know that it's going to happen. I know Dana hasn't announced that it happened, but I'm here to tell you that Henry did, and so did Aljo. Seems to me like we've got a fight. And apparently, wouldn't you know, going to be in March.